Welcome to another episode of Metal Mastermind, co-founder and co-host of this really awesome podcast you guys are listening to, Jason Stallworth, and also co-founder and co-host, the great
Dallas, my brother.
dude.
Dude, this is amazing. I love our podcast. It's honestly enriched my soul very much.
It's fun. You know, I read a quote. I kind of like changed the quote to my own words, and now I can't remember what the quote was, but it was something along the lines of, if it's not fun, you know, maybe you should do something else. I think it was a Richard Branson quote that I put out there. Actually, yeah, I put his full quote, and I don't remember the quote. I never remember anything, but it was in regards to how he built his businesses, and just he's like, you know, if it's not fun for me, if the process isn't fun, then you know, and I got to thinking about it. I'm like, we only get one go around. I'm aware of, you know, if I were some other person before this life, well, I don't remember that. I just talked about not remembering stuff, and
you don't have a good track history of that.
No, dude, no, not a good track history. You know, but if that's not the case, then it just ends and we go somewhere else. Wait, look, I want to make the most out of this, and I say that to say this podcast is so much fun, dude. I enjoy it. I actually listened to it in the shower the other day. I always listen to it on one speed, you know, so we sound like so professional when you speed it up.
Man, I need that in my life. 1.5 speed. And then we are like we're over in 1.5.
Yeah, it's really cool. Then I can listen to them like, you know, we've got some cool stuff to say, and we only have cool stuff to say because we got an absolute killer audience and subscribers out there, guys. So today we are going to talk a little bit about a subject that, I'm going to be honest, I'm quite boring. Like, I'm already falling asleep, so don't fall asleep, okay? Because it's going to benefit you, and I'm going to share some things I've learned along the way through the great Ken Candelas here. We're talking a little bit about music theory, and is it about something you should learn? So Ken, you're the music theory buff, dude. Like, you know this stuff like the back of your hand, man. So
well, let me make an absolute upfront confession. When I was learning music theory, I freaking failed my classes. So awesome. Just get it from the guy who's teaching it to you now that music theory in the beginning was always hard for me too to absorb. And I think in some way, shape, or form, you know, the teacher definitely on that, but it's a complex subject for a beginner, because what you're trying to do is attribute logic to something that's inherently very emotional to us.
It's so contrast, dude. Yeah.
You know, any argument, you know, I consider myself like a very, very like logical person. So whenever I get into any argument, you know, and Elizabeth, she'll quote me on this. She's like, "Oh my God, you're too logical sometimes." You know, I can't be logical around emotion all the time. So I can understand the disconnect when people are going from, you know, creating this song that they're working on, and it's very emotionally based for them, and then they're not even thinking. And that's actually how you make music. It's you tap into the emotional side, the thing that, you know, rivets you, and you want to just compound on that. Yeah. So music theory on its own, I actually appreciate a lot later in life. You know, it became something of like a realization to me how much I was using it without even really realizing it. And then when I finally understood, it was game changing, because now I was able to do things quicker. I was able to also learn from others quicker. I mean, dude, in my early days, like when I was like 15 years old, I was getting involved with transcribing and making, you know, notes on finale as a 15-year-old, just trying to learn the Legend of Zelda. And I was like, okay, I'm transcribing Zelda music. And what that did for me was I broke down a lot of the orchestral technique and the instrumentation that was being used, and it helped me to learn how to actually orchestral music in some way, shape, or form. And then, of course, when you're working on your own music, that's where it really comes to life, because how are you utilizing that information now, right? So, yeah, music theory is it in the beginning, because it's like this is a quarter note, this is a half note, and it's like, okay, but now you're like, okay, how can I take that and use it in a very cool way? For one thing, here's something that music theory really opened my eyes to, was how to look at rhythm. That was like a total different approach for me, because I would actually consider types of time signatures as, like odd time or whatever. And for example, I'd be like, oh, 9/8, yeah, that's odd time because it's it's a 9, and it's like, but that's actually not true. It's not true. It's not, so what? And you're like, what? Well, I don't get it, Ken. It's 9. 9 is an odd number. And you're like, yes, but actually 9 is divisible by 3 evenly.
Oh,
so
okay.
You have 3, 3, 3 of 3. So it's inherently not odd time, but it's actually something we call compound time. Okay. So compound time is just groups of 3. And that's where you get the whole feeling of a 6. It's like 1, 2,
Gotcha.
3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. You get that grouping of 3, but it's even. It's even within the context of 3s. So when you're doing odd time, when you have simple and compound meter, simple meter being like, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? You got those separations. It's divisible by 2. Now, odd time is divisible by 10 3s. You have to have all of them in there in the same pot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You hear the simple and the compound together, and that's what's odd time. So I was like, oh my god,
light bulb came on.
Yeah, light bulb came on, and it was like, okay, so really, rhythm and tempo and time signatures, it comes down to the pulse, because this is a huge people have problems with. They're like, dude, I'm listening to a song, but how do I know if it's in 3/4, if it's in 6/8? And it's like,
so we're talking like Dream Theater type stuff, and
I mean, sure, you could do bands,
that. Yeah.
But I mean, even beyond just the ultra prog metal type stuff, I mean, just a simple 3/4 versus a 6/8. How do you know the difference? Well, it's all about that pulse. Does it feel like it's 1 and 2 and 3 and, or does it feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Right? That's a different pulse. So where does the beat really feel and land? Where is the weight distribution of your music kind of landing? And that's how you're going to learn how to, with these different time signatures. It's an amazing like epiphany that I had.
The weird thing in all this, like all the stuff we just talked about, or you just talked about with timing and all that good stuff, quarter notes, half notes. I didn't, and I'm just ignorance here. I never thought of that as being part of music theory. I think a lot of guitar players, if you're like me, I grew up playing guitar, not really learning deep theory. I learned the basic stuff. We'll kind of talk about that later, how you sort of, even though you're not like studying it, right? But I always thought of music theory like these weird skills you have to learn, and I don't know. Sometimes we have this pre-notion, and that might be a misconception of what music theory. You're talking about timings. Well, I had to learn some of that to do the tabs.
Right.
For our courses, I provide tablatures, and I provide what's called the guitar profile. That's a software, and we're not affiliated with these folks, but where I use, and a lot of musicians use, to do the notation and even the tabs. Well, even if you're just doing simple tabs, because a lot of us guitar players, we don't want the sheet music, we want the tabs, bro. Show me where to put the fingers, the fret and string, which makes, but you still have to know some of the theory to get the timing down with the notes, the
Right.
BPM, the tempo, and how all that fits in, how all the notes are going to fit in. Are these sixteenths? You're doing those real fast, all right? Or are they quarter notes, half notes, and so forth? So, I mean, I've had to dive into theory, not even realizing this is what I was learning. That theory was what I was learning over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, take for example, like Sleepwalker by Megadeth. I love that song. It's
Oh, that's
such
a
a
cool tune, man.
it's
Yeah,
a groovy tune, but it's a great
yeah,
example of a 3/4 versus a 6/8.
yeah,
And when you're going to play it, I mean, when we're talking about rhythm, right? Just tell the musician how to feel the music. That's where it comes down to. So
yeah,
if you tell somebody you want them to make it feel like 3/4, in Sleepwalker, you're hearing dun dun digga 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 dun dun digga 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 digga
yeah,
dun dun digga 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 dun dun digga 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, right? That's the three. But then he gets into another part of the song where it completely changes feel. It's still threes, but it's a 6/8 time. So now it's
mm,
dun dun da 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 dun dun da 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 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 dun dun da 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 dun dun da 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 da. It's different. It has a different pulse, right? So that kind of structure that you're putting into something like a tab is paramount because
yeah, it
I
is.
could probably play dun 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. It's like to change how we perceive the music. So you need to have a good foundation of just interpreting rhythm to make tabs a successful venture.
Yeah,
That's why I also really appreciate this. Not only puts tabs, but they also put the actual music on what it would be played on the guitar in notation form right above the tab,
yeah,
because then you can actually see the rhythm for what it is and where it is supposed to be played on the guitar. Not only that, but with when a guitar tab and music really come into play, I really really love it because you see just exactly like the on the staff
yeah,
the exact note that they want you to play. And then I look at tabs as a way to show ergonomics
sure.
because if you have only one or the other, a lot of it can be up to interpretation in some way, shape, or form. And you have to just make sure that tuning, because if I'm going to use the sheet music, I know exactly what tuning I'm doing because
Sure.
it's written there for me. But with a tab, it may not be necessarily written there for me. So I have to be very aware of that kind of stuff. And I'm not a so I don't actually do this. You do this.
Yeah,
but,
I do this stuff. Yeah.
but yeah, I think you understand my point. And it's paramount, man. The two are they coexist. It's not like, oh, I have to forgo just this, just to get whatever.
Yeah, you have to know all that stuff if you want to provide accurate tabs. Like I used to write out tabs for people. I would just draw the lines like the dashes to make a line in like a Word document or whatever, right? Or the Apple
Yeah.
document and number in there where you put your finger. But I never put the timing or anything like that. I never really worried about like this is how you play it. Just listen to it and listen to what's going on. Which I'll be honest with you, not steering away from because again I've had to learn some of it to provide accurate tabs, but I also in the same token or the flip side rather I also encourage people to use your ears as well. If you're learning something or writing something, learn to don't be the type of musician that always has to have the music and the tabs. Like if it's multiple parts, like can you do a lot of orchestration, right? Well, a little bit different story because there's so many layers of things going on. But if you're just learning a guitar part, no pun intended, is that for the most part you should be able to learn that by hearing it without having to see every single note on the sheet of paper. Train your ears to do the work and trust them. That's kind of a different topic altogether.
I mean, it's music. Music, you have to use your ears. That's where we come down to the basics of it, right? There's also there's the other side to that too of being crippled by using the tool only.
Yeah,
If you create tools in a super logical manner, then okay, your music's boring now because it's just
Yeah.
it's very cold approach. It's not using the emotion that drove us to do music in the first place.
Yeah.
It's not driven by that anymore, and that's one of the reasons why, just historically we moved away from that kind of music. I mean, if you want a good example, just listen to Sebastian Bach, back in the 1600s and 1700s. I mean, that's in by today's standards, very cold, calculated music, and in its ways are, there's some beauty to it. Absolutely. Referred to that kind of music as what we call absolute music. And a lot of artists back in that time were doing it because their absolutism came from the inspiration from the Almighty, the God, right? And that was what they were writing music. So many sacred masses and all this kind of stuff during that time. But then you started getting into, the Baroque and end of the Baroque period into the classical era, which, if you didn't know, yes, there's a dedicated era of classical music. Not classical,
That's
but
pretty cool, man. Yeah.
yeah. So you get into like Mozart and Beethoven, and those are the guys that were like, man, I'm tired of this cold and calculated stuff. I want to write music with emotion. And that all of this stems from, right? You got Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. They started an entire trend. And Beethoven single-handedly started an entire musical movement called the Romantic era. So that kind of stuff. And you started getting piano pieces because the piano was then invented in the modern form. And, that's where you got people like Schubert and Chopin and all these other kinds of composers. And that, I mean, everything that we're hearing, right? A lot of it stems from that era. And the music theory is, at the time, was considered wrong in some way, shape, or form, because they were utilizing music that accentuated different types of philosophy, or in this case, emotion, like dissonance. If you played a tritone in the medieval era, it wasn't necessarily that you were worshiping, considered like, no, that is wrong. You don't do that. Just because it was dissonance. So that's why all this,
right?
It's not necessarily evil, because they didn't think it was necessarily evil, but it was just harmonious. And if it wasn't harmonious, it was incorrect. So they would correct that. And so you would hear all this other type of music, like listen to anything from a medieval era, and it's all like, oh, let hip hip hop, like all this Gregorian chanting, and it's just very, very like harmonious, boring, just all these easy harmonies that aren't very interesting in some way, shape, or form. Until you get to this era where people are playing with dissonance, and then 1900s came about, and you started to get impressionism and abstractism and expressionism and all this kind of stuff, where like who's creating music that is all dissonance. And John Cage comes out and he's like, hey, that piano, let's stick some nails and pins in it, and let's just make some cool sound design from it. So everything was being challenged. And now we have this awesome musical genre called metal. And this is honestly, metal is like a philosophy, right? I mean, you could consider like Mozart being the metal guy of his era, Beethoven being the metal guy of his era, because before those guys, it was the norm, to do something like Bach, right? And that's super important. Everything is relative, music theory is just understanding music. The more you understand the language of music, the more you can figure out how to make music your own, right? And that's something that we promote here, right? Create your own sound.
Oh yeah. No, that's good stuff, dude. And it's great, tying this. Like it sounds like those folks were kind of breaking the rules, so to speak.
Yes.
And I used to think of music theory as a set of rules, and I'll be honest, I still sort of do sometimes, and that maybe that's just a old mindset too that probably needs to die out. Because I what I learned is I inadvertently learned some theory. Like when I started playing guitar, 1989, my uncle bought me this chord book. It was a Mel-based chord book, so I learned the basic chord. And it told you, it showed the six strings, where to place your fingers. Well, what I didn't realize later, or until later, was I mean, at a very high level, that's music theory. Those
Mm-hmm.
notes that make up that chord, well, I play a G. If I tell anyone your instrument, your guitar, bass, whatever, keyboard, and play a G chord, and you know where to place your fingers to make that sound, well, I think it's safe to say you know a little bit of music theory, because without the theory, well, it would just be notes. So I think that
Absolutely.
theory is kind of like it's kind of like giving your pet a name, like our dog Frodo, right? I mean, and we got our cats, our feral cats. We named them too. One cat we just call him Big Kitty. We took him in about a year ago. So we didn't think he'd hang around very long, but he started coming inside, and now he's in bed with us. So here we are a year later. Well, Big Kitty is our cat. Anyway, but I guess if you look at theory, and kind of the way I look at it at a high level, is a name just so we know what to call it, like an E minor chord. Okay. Now my theory education doesn't go too far beyond that. Like, I don't know all the scales. I know the major, minor scales or whatever. Those are simple, but you get beyond that, and I'll play times, and you may tell me, Ken, well, okay, you didn't play an actual scale, but that could be based on this skill over here, like the Ken Candelasonian skill or something.
Well, let's get into that, because I mean, like, people know, majority of musicians, they know majors and minors.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, and yes, by the way, to just confirm your statement, we all know music theory to an extent. If
Yeah.
you're
Some
if you're
extent.
if you're playing an instrument, you have a little bit of music theory to an extent, even
Right.
if it's just intuition by, learning from listening to your favorite artists and trying to mimic their notes. You're still learning placement of a note, timing of a note, right? Structure that's building around, and you can even make your own song without knowing like the formal version of music theory, but using your intuition based upon what people have been using for centuries. So we all know a little bit. Why go the extra mile, right? Let's say you're in Metal Guitar Apprentice, right? And you're
Yeah.
playing, and you're learning how to play metal style guitar, and then you're like, okay, what's the next logical step? I get a metal riff master. Let's start developing the riffage and the technique and the dexterity for how to create, metal riffs. Then you're like, okay, I got all these riffs in mind. How do I make it into a song? Well, you got Metal Songwriters Forge for that, right? And that starts to develop your tone in terms of how do you piece your things together. But then you come up to this point in the chorus, and you're like, yo, Ken is like talking about this theory stuff, and why, like, I don't get this, because it's like, I understand it emotionally, right? I
Yeah.
understand what Jason, with his riffage on "You Are Your Master." I understand what's going on there emotionally, but then Ken starts talking about all this other stuff, and it's like, well, how does that help me? And it's like, here's how it helps you. It allows you to music in a way that you can use for yourself down the road. So it's all just proven formulas. Let's just put it that way. It's like all this information that I spew out when I talk about theory, it's not because, oh, theory just makes you a more official musician. It's not anything like that. It's just because when you learn theory, you understand the mechanics. It's kind of like saying I'm a car mechanic. And yeah, I kind of understand what the gas line does or a carburetor does. But really, like, if you want to repair an engine or you want to repair any of this kind of stuff, you kind of have to a little bit. You could probably learn a thing or two by just, mimicking what the other guy's doing, or you could really understand what those mechanics do and why they're there, because then on a fundamental level, it's kind of like saying, well, okay, a guy a fish to eat for a day, teach him how to fish so he can eat for a lifetime. That's what this is about. So music theory is like that tool. It's the fishing line. It's not the boat that you're in or you. All of that, that's music. The fishing line is music theory. That's the thing that can get you some new ideas that you would have never thought about if you didn't have a tool to get you there, right? All that fish in the sea, those are new ideas that, hey, swordfish before. Holy crap, this is kind of cool, right? You figure out, it's like, oh, that's a Neapolitan chord. Neapolitan chords sound so cool in this context, right? So all of this kind of like reveals things that you may have because you just didn't know it existed. And it opens doors. It opens up new pathways for your music to make intricate, different styles. And then you start, looking at this stuff a totally different way. Profound impact on your musicality, honestly, in totality.
No, it makes a lot of sense, man. And I think like me, I've inadvertently learned more and more theory over the years. Let's pitch that real quick, guys. We do have a complete theory course called Metal Music Theory. Just head over to metalmastermind.com, go to courses. You'll see Ken's course. Ken teaches that. And you've got a nice way of presenting that, so it's not like over the top. And we went back and upgraded the course with a few guitar parts that's where I came in to add some guitar parts to give examples of what you're sharing. But great course if you want to dive in. Me, I'm kind of I'm very much really most things in life, and you guys know this. So you seem to have two camps of extremes these days with almost everything, and relating it to theory. Well, you got one camp's like, well, you're not a musician if you don't learn theory. You've got another camp that's like, well, I don't want to learn theory. It's going to stump my creativity. The truth is usually somewhere down the middle. It's kind of like our prior podcast where we talked about digital versus analog. Married to one or the other, right? You can learn to use both. So theory, you can use theory to help you and to learn some things, even if it's something simple, just by getting the notation down or the timing down with. You want to create appropriate tablature for a song you wrote. Hey guys, maybe you release a single and you're like, okay, well, I want to make some extra income off this. Well, hey, make a tab book of the song, teach people how to play it. Well, to do to know a little bit of theory to appropriately create those tabs that you can sell online. Hey, quick tip for you guys to make some dough. That's one of the many ways you can bring in some income for yourself.
Yeah, right? And it's your own music.
Just a quick example. So you might want to learn some. I think, Ken, you go over that in the first part of the course, tempos and timing and all that good stuff, which is really monumental. And you may learn some bits and pieces, and you may decide not to take it too much further or a little further or all the way. But I don't know. I don't like to go to either extreme. Like, I don't feel like I need to learn more theory. I inadvertently will probably learn some more and get better in certain areas. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you, well,
So here's a really good indicator if you should poke your head into theory. Okay. You're writing songs, but at a certain point, you're either bored of what you're doing, you just have complete block and you have no way to approach the next thing. Yeah. That's where you go, hey, I need to look for a tool that can help me out of this rut. Right. Yeah. And that's where theory comes in. I think a lot get obsessed or they get intimidated by theory because they think they have to learn it all now. and honestly, you don't. Theory can be something that you learn along in your development, because you may need in the beginning only the bits and pieces that are relevant to you, like note length and tempo and maybe some time signature stuff. But from that point on, not need theory for a little while until you start getting really good at what you're doing. And then you're like, man, I got the note length, the tempo down, the time signature's down. Now what? And it's like, I don't know, playing major and minor chords. Can I do anything more than that? Is this the limit to my musical knowledge? No. Let's look into something new for you now. Have you heard of something called modes? Right. And then it's like, oh, there's different scales. Holy crap. That can unlock an entire new freaking thing for you. Right. So everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so intimidated because like music theory gets so advanced. Yeah. If you're at a point where you're ready for that, then do that. But you don't have to go from A to Z in 1 month. Like, just start from A, go to maybe C, right? Get those ABCs down, and then you can go D, E, F, G, H, I, etc. later in your career. It's something that grows with you over time. I can't stress that enough. People automatically think, oh my God, like I need to learn this all now, or I'm not a real musician. No, dude, you're a musician because you have some innate ability to make a creation. That's what being a musician is. I love this quote that I heard. Art is decorating space, music, time, right? And this kind of concept is just kind of like, yeah, well, you know what? Music requires time. That's the only way it exists, right? You got time and space, the two, our reality. And now, if you are, trying to learn how to create more music, then just be patient. Have more time for music. And then when you're ready to get to the next level, that's is there for you, right? Yeah. That's why, you don't have to immediately jump from Metal Guitar Apprentice to Metal Songwriters Forge if you're not ready for it. If you're just trying to learn how to play guitar, take the next step. Go to Riffmaster. From Riffmaster, go into Songwriters Forge, right? And then beyond that, you're like, yo, like, I got a song ready. Now what? Okay, let's show you how to produce that. Then you got Producer Overlord for that. This is what I've been trying to do this entire time. Here at Metal Mastermind, we saw that in this market of musicians, metal musicians, there was a lack of resources for you guys. And we were saying, okay, rather than having, because Jason, you've been on more than a decade.
2010. Yeah, for
13 years.
13 years now. Yeah. This month, actually 13 years this month, I think.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You're speaking to an audience of folks have in many ways have grown their musicality through a resource like YouTube. Yeah. And how powerful is it that we can have the capacity to speak to these people in a one central, all their resources that they want to do their metal music, forever and ever, like that's what we're trying to do here at Metal Mastermind, be that hub for you. Because honestly, you go to a college institution to learn music, and you're going to have to play all these different styles. And you know what? That's cool if you want to do that. But some of us, maybe, we love metal and we want to learn specifically metal, right? That's what we're here for. So if you haven't already checked out Metal Music Theory, it's literally for the metal musician, how to take these generic concepts of music theory and attribute them to the metal genre. That's what it's there for.
Yep. And guys, you can pick that up at metalmastermind.com. That is our website. There's a big button that says courses on there. So yeah, definitely check out Metal Music Theory. Ken, this is I've enjoyed this chat. Again, music theory was something I always kind of shied away from, and only years later, that I realized, well, I've been inadvertently learning a lot of theory over the years, because again, like you said, guitar and play a chord and play a few notes. Well, some sort of theory to be able to do that. So,
right.
Dude, good chat, man. Anything else that you would like to encourage people when it comes to music theory? Like the people say, well, care about it, just don't need it. I mean, what would you say to those folks?
maybe it's just you don't realize the value of it just yet. And that's okay. I think it's important to focus on your artistry first.
Yeah.
Then when you want that tool, that's where you break out the toolbox. I would say if you're a developing artist and you're early in your career, music theory can help you grow faster. Overwhelm yourself with trying to learn everything about it. You're talking about something that's been developed over not just like here at Metal Mastermind. It's been developed over centuries of just, musicians across different eras of time. Inherently, it's a universal language that has a lot of complexity to it. So, take your time. If you're intimidated by music theory, just use the basics first and see how the basics can all a bunch of different possibilities for you. Stick to just major and minor in the beginning, right? And then when you're ready to go from major and minor, you can try, Dorian mode or Locrian mode or any of these other kinds of different scales, different types of paths, right? And then you can go into other kinds of complexes like counterpoint. How do you put your, lead melodies and harmonies together and your bass lines together? And what is all of that, right? It's all a matter of in your path, but it's a toolbox. Again, it's not a set of rules. And that's what I think people get really wrong about it. It's not a set of rules. It's a toolbox. You use the tool when you need it. When you have
my modes real quick, man. I was like, that reminds me of the video that we had to take down from Metal Mastermind that I created because I just murdered it, man. Like, I understand the concept of modes. It's just an extending that scale, right, with those notes and going into. I got the concept, but I called the names wrong: Dorian, Ionian, and whatever Onian, Candelasonian. So I just completely screwed up the video and made myself look like an idiot. So we ended up taking that video down, obviously, like the next day.
I think you're, to me, I was actually super proud that you even tried, because what you were doing, Jason, was putting yourself out there in a way that wanted to push yourself to learn. And okay, sure, maybe it bombed the first time doing it, but you know what? That didn't mean that it negated what you took away from it either. I think what you were trying to do was trying to share your knowledge, and okay, no problem. Well, that's what we can do. We can fix that for everybody else who wants to learn more about that. But go ahead.
More of the story is you can't win if you don't play, so you got to get out there and try stuff, even if you fall flat on your face like I did.
Exactly. It's just performing, man. Yeah. You go out there and you play the best that you can. You do it, yeah. Sometimes you flub, sometimes you nail it. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad player. It just means that you just time on it, and that's okay. And if anything, it just shows you something you can work on. And that's a point that can help increase your musicianship, right? So I love we point out our own mistakes, that we're real people. We're not like some, perfect God. We're people just like anybody else listening to this podcast. The only difference is that we decide that we're very open about it, right? We're more of a public figure in this case.
Yeah, we don't show you just the good stuff, even on my channel. And sometimes I'll be given a lesson on my channel, and I'll screw up. I'm like, okay, Jason, what are you doing? And I'll leave it on the channel. I'm like, well, I screw up sometimes, guys. Even on riffs that I write. The riffs I put out there is just stuff that I came up with on the fly. I haven't even actually written the whole thing yet. I just got an idea and I want to share it, and I think it's a good exercise. But no, and the other thing about screwing up, Ken, you and I are also, we're not just musicians. Newer world,
sure.
And when you're reaching out to do anything that's notable and great or worthwhile, you will fail. It's safe to say you'll fail more times than you'll succeed. But the failures, you don't really look at them and at them is really just education. It's just a learning step to get to where you want to go and continue building. And I don't think you can be afraid of failing, right? We all have that fear inside of us of failing, but I think overcome that by stepping outside of that and just pushing forward. Hey, so what? You fall down. Think of a kid trying to learn how to walk. Now, none of us really remember that, right? But at some point you learn, but you probably fell on your rump like a gazillion times before you started taking those steps. And even then you're a little wobbly, right? So and even as an adult, sometimes, I remember I tripped over the steps coming up to the studio and I had a full plate of eggs and bacon on my plate. I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
Just goes to show you though that you're not always going to do everything perfectly, right? You're gonna have some mishaps in life, and those end up being kind of cool stories about your journey, and that's just
Yeah.
what it is. You gotta
Well, it's
enjoy
kind
that.
of like a necessary evil because there's, hey, let's just use the universal term, no pain, no gain,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
We have to break the barriers of what's comfortable in order to get to the next level. That's
yeah.
just how anything is in life. Even theory and music itself, right? You want to be a better guitar player. You're gonna have to go through the arduous journey of getting your tremolo picking freaking on par. It's gonna suck in the beginning. It's the suck
Yep.
because that's what's gonna get you to the next level, and you got to do it because you really want it. You know. So music theory is the same thing, man.
The same thing.
It's the same thing. It's a language of music, and you just have to be patient with, but you have to commit to, being on the path. You have to say, not only if I were to give any other advice is not only should you be practicing, regularly, but take a time, to just read and learn more about the theory that applies to your playing. Even if it were to take, here's a great tool. We have, if you're in Metal Songwriters Forge or if you're in Metal Music, we have a online booklet for you. That's so
Right.
great to have, because what it is, I think it's like 40 pages of just basically a summary of what's going on in the course. And you can use it. You could go onto the bathroom and the dumpster, right? Just learning a little bit about music theory just that way,
Just a little at a time. Yeah.
just a little bit at a time, right? Like maybe just read a page,
Bite
and
size.
just try to absorb the information on what we're giving you. And then when you're like, okay, maybe then go on to the next one. Or you're like, I want to expand a little bit more about this. Okay, that's what the course is for, right? You can go in and see, how I explain it there. And then you can hear the examples, right? There's examples single lesson on music
Yeah.
theory in the course. It's an extensive thing that we built. So that's my recommendation. It's just a little bit at a time, bite-sized pieces. You'll get there. And it's nothing. Everybody starts somewhere. I mean, hell, learning an entire other language, right? If you think about learning just Thai or Italian or Spanish or any of these other types of languages out in the world, the first thing you're is hello or
Yep.
thank you, or goodbye, right? These sorts of things are like your quarter notes, eighth notes, half
Yeah.
notes, right? It's all the same thing. It's the same thing, and progressively get more advanced as you
Yeah. To
go. And
that.
but you have to practice. You have to spend the time. You have to learn it. And I didn't realize the value of music theory when I was first learning it. I had to beg my teacher to make me, get through, because I otherwise wouldn't have gotten my degree. But now, looking back, I'm like, Ken, you're such an idiot. That was such good information. And if you were just a little bit more wise at the time to just pay attention a little bit more and really try, then you walked out with an A+ and learning exactly what you know now.
It's true. Yeah. Hey, sawadee cup, pomri and pasatai. Jep, jepi na leo. So that's I've been learning Thai for about 7 years now. So yeah, learn. It's a great analogy because you don't learn everything in one shot, and you're gonna screw up. I still screw up
Yes.
Thai words sometimes, and my wife and I we're both reading and writing some Thai now, or texting rather. It's a very good analogy to theory. You can't really expect to learn it all in one shot, and get the basics down first, like your hellos and goodbyes and that sort of thing. So, dude, this is a again, great chat about theory. Guys, head over to metal.com. Check out all of our courses. We are the place to go for courses for metal musicians, for all of you. Metal music theories on that page as well. So do check that out. And hey, guys, thank you so much for supporting Metal Mastermind. Ken and I both, we're honored to have you as part of the family, this metal community. We deeply appreciate you. Until next time, as always, create your own sound.